I have done 30 plus certifications and am here to guide you throughout your certification journey. In this video, we will be covering some important questions of the Microsoft DP-900 exam. You can find the complete PDF of this video and our practice questions through the link down in the description. To the important questions, question 1. You have a SQL query that combines customer data and order data. The query includes calculated columns. You need to create a database object that would allow other users to rerun the same SQL query. What should you create? Here in this question, our main goal is to allow users to rerun the same SQL query. As such, we should create a view. Thus, the correct option is B. A view is a virtual table whose contents are defined by a query. A view acts as a filter on the underlying tables referenced in the view. The query that defines the view can be from one or more tables or from other views in the current or other databases. Question 2. What are two characteristics of real-time data processing? The two characteristics of real-time data processing are low latency is expected and data is processed as it is created. Thus, the correct options are B and D. Real time processing deals with streams of data that are captured in real time and processed with minimal latency to generate real time reports or automated responses. Question 3. Which statement is an example of data manipulation language? Update is a statement that is an example of DML. Thus, the correct option is D. Data manipulation language affect the information stored in the database. Use these statements to insert, update, and change the rows in the database. Bulk insert dash, delete dash, insert dash, select dash, update dash, merge dash. Question 4. You need to create an Azure resource to store data in Azure table storage. Which command should you run? Here in this question, we need to create an Azure resource to store data in Azure table storage. As such, we should run the az storage account create command. Thus, the correct option is B. Due to no easy storage table create in the selection, the best answer is B, create storage account. Question 5. You need to modify a view, a relational database by adding a new column. Which statement should you use? Here in this question, we need to modify a view in a relational database by adding a new column. As such, we should use the alter statement. Thus, the correct option is B. Question 6. Which Azure storage solution provides native support for PO6 compliant access control lists? Azure Data Lake Storage provides native support for PO6 compliant ACLs. Thus, the correct option is B. Question 7. Which type of database is Azure database for PostgreSQL? Azure database for PostgreSQL is a platform as a service type of database. Thus, the correct option is A. Question 8. Which storage solution supports access control lists at the file and folder level? Azure Data Lake Storage supports access control lists at the file and folder level. Thus, the correct option is A. Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 implements an access control model that supports both Azure role-based access control and PO6-like access control lists. Question 9. What is a characteristic of batch processing? A characteristic of batch processing is that there is a noticeable time delay between ingesting data and obtaining the data processing results. Thus, the correct option is C. Question 10. Which property of a transactional workload guarantees that each transaction is treated as a single unit that either succeeds completely or fails completely? The atomicity property of a transactional workload guarantees that each transaction is treated as a single unit that either succeeds completely or fails completely. Thus, the correct option is A. The purpose of making transactions atomic is to prevent different transactions from interfering with one another. This can only happen if more than one user process is trying to access the database at the same time, as when a server allows several clients to use it concurrently. The simplest way to enforce atomicity is for the DBMS to refuse to start any transaction until the previous one has committed. Question 11. Which type of database contains nodes and edges? It is a graph database that contains nodes and edges. Thus, the correct option is A. A graph database stores two types of information, nodes and edges. Edges specify relationships between nodes. Nodes and edges can have properties that provide information about that node or edge, similar to columns in a table. Edges can also have a direction indicating the nature of the relationship. Question 12. You are writing a set of SQL queries that administrators will use to troubleshoot an Azure SQL database. You need to embed documents and query results into a SQL notebook. What should you use? Here in this question, we need to embed documents and query results into a SQL notebook. As such, we should use Azure Data Studio. Thus, the correct option is B. Azure Data Studio is a cross-platform database tool that allows you to embed documents and query results into a SQL notebook. It supports Azure SQL databases SQL Server, and other databases. It also has built-in support for SQL notebooks, which allows you to mix Markdown, code, and results in a single notebook. This makes it a great tool for creating documentation and troubleshooting guides for administrators to use when working with Azure SQL databases. Question 13. You have an e-commerce application that reads and writes data to an Azure SQL database. Which type of processing does the application use? Here in this question, based on the given description, the app uses online transaction processing. Thus, the correct option is D. OLTP is designed to serve as a persistent data store for business or front-end applications. OLTP administers day-to-day transaction of an organization. Question 14. When can you use an Azure Resource Manager template? We can use an Azure Resource Manager template to automate the creation of an interdependent group of Azure resources in a repeatable way. Thus, the correct option is A. You can automate deployments and use the practice of infrastructure as code. In code, you define the infrastructure that needs to be deployed to implement infrastructure as code for your Azure solutions. Use Azure Resource Manager templates. A template is a JavaScript object notation file that defines the infrastructure and configuration for your project. The template uses declarative syntax, which lets you state what you intend to deploy without having to write the sequence of programming commands to create it. In the template, you specify the resources to deploy and the properties for those resources. Question 15. You have an Azure SQL database that you access directly from the internet. You recently changed the public IP address of your computer. After changing the IP address, you can no longer access the database. You can connect to the resources in Azure. What is a possible cause of this issue? Here in this question, after changing the IP address, we can no longer access the database, but we can still connect to other resources in Azure. As such, possible cause of this issue could be database level firewall. Thus, the correct option is D. The Azure SQL database firewall lets you decide which IP addresses may or may not have access to either your Azure SQL server or your Azure SQL database. When creating an Azure SQL database, the firewall needs to be configured before anyone will be able to access the database. By default, no external access to your SQL database will be allowed until you explicitly assign permission by creating a firewall rule. Question 16. Which command line tool can you use to query Azure SQL databases? SQL CMD is the command line tool that we can use to query Azure SQL databases. Thus, the correct option is A. The SQL CMD utility lets you enter transact SQL statements, system procedures, and script files at the command prompt. Question 17. Which statement is an example of data definition language? The create statement is an example of data definition language. Thus, the correct option is D. DDL statements defines data structures. Use these statements to create, alter, or drop data structures in a database. These statements include the following. Question 18. You are deploying a software as a service application that requires a relational database for online transaction processing. Which Azure service should you use to support the application? Here in this question, based on the given scenario, the Azure service that we should use to support the application is Azure SQL database. Thus, the correct option is C. Azure SQL database is relational database and a managed service. Question 19. What are two benefits of platform as a service relational database offerings in Azure, such as Azure SQL database? The two benefits of platform as a service relational database offerings in Azure includes access to the latest features and reduced administrative effort for managing the server infrastructure. Thus, the correct option is A and D. About the options, A. Azure SQL database is a fully managed platform as a service database engine that handles most of the database management functions such as upgrading, patching, backups, and monitoring without user involvement. About D, SQL database delivers predictable performance with multiple resource types, service tiers, and compute sizes. It provides dynamic scalability with no downtime, built-in intelligent optimization, global scalability and availability, and advanced security options. These capabilities allow you to focus on rapid app development and accelerating your time to market rather than on managing virtual machines and infrastructures. Question 20. When you create an Azure SQL database, which account can always connect to the database? When we create an Azure SQL database, it is the server admin login account of the logical server that can always connect to the database. Thus, the correct option is B. When you first deploy Azure SQL, you specify an admin log and an associated password for that login. This administrative account is called server admin. Question 21. Team of developers has computers that run Windows 10 and Ubuntu desktop. The developers need to connect to and query an Azure SQL database from each of their computers. The developers require code assistance features such as IntelliSense. What should the developers use? Here in this question, the developers need to connect to and query an Azure SQL database from each of their computers and require code assistance features. As such, they should use Azure Data Studio. Thus, the correct option is C. Azure Data Studio is a cross-platform database tool for data professionals who use on-premises and cloud data platforms on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. Azure Data Studio offers a modern editor experience with intelligence, code snippets, source control integration, and an integrated terminal. Question 22. You need to ensure that users use multi-factor authentication when connecting to an Azure SQL database. Which type of authentication should you use? Here in this question, we need to ensure that users use multi-factor authentication when connecting to an Azure SQL database. As such, we should use Azure AD authentication. Thus, the correct option is B. Other authentication types, such as Service Principal Authentication, SQL Authentication, and Certificate Authentication, don't allow the use of multi-factor authentication. Question 23. What is a benefit of hosting a database on Azure SQL managed instance as compared to an Azure SQL database? Here in this question, the benefit is the native support for cross-database queries and transactions. Thus, the correct option is B. Question 24. You need to design and model a database by using a graphical tool that supports project-oriented offline database development. What should you use? Here in this question, we need to design and model a database by using a graphical tool that supports project-oriented offline database development. As such, we should use Microsoft SQL Server Data Tools. Thus, the correct option is A. SQL Server Data Tools is a modern development tool for building SQL Server relational databases, databases in Azure SQL, analysis services, data models, integration services packages, and reporting services reports. With SSDT, you can design and deploy any SQL Server content type with the same ease as you would develop an application in Visual Studio. Question 25. You have a transactional application that stores data in an Azure SQL managed instance. When should you implement a read-only database replica? Here in this question, we have a transactional application that stores data in an Azure SQL managed instance. As such, we should implement a read-only database replica when we need to generate reports without affecting the transactional workload. Thus, the correct option is A. You should implement a read-only database replica when you need to generate reports without affecting the transactional workload. A read-only replica is a copy of the database that can be used for reporting or other read-only workloads without affecting the performance of the transactional application. This allows you to offload reporting and other read-only workloads to the replica, which can improve the performance of the transactional application. Question 26. You need to query a table named products in an Azure SQL database. Which three requirements must be met to query the table from the internet? Here in this question, the three requirements that must be met are: you must have select access to the products table, you must have a user in the database, and your IP address must be allowed to connect to the database. Thus, the correct options are B, C, and E. Question 27. Which clause should you use in a select statement to combine rows in one table with rows in another table? Here in this question, we should use the join clause in a select statement to meet our requirement. Thus, the correct option is D. Question 28. Your company needs to ensure that an Azure virtual machine can connect to Azure SQL databases without exposing the databases to the internet. What should you use? Here in this question, we need to ensure that an Azure virtual machine can connect to Azure SQL databases without exposing the database to the internet. As such, we should use Azure Private Link. Thus, the correct option is D. Azure Private Link enables you to access Azure Platform as a Service and Azure hosted, customer owned, or partner services over a private endpoint in your virtual network. Traffic between your virtual network and the service travels the Microsoft backbone network. Exposing your service to the public internet is no longer necessary. Question 29. Which Azure service provides the highest compatibility for databases migrated from Azure SQL Server 2019 Enterprise Edition? Here in this question, the Azure service that provides the highest compatibility based on our requirement is Azure SQL Managed Instance. Thus, the correct option is C. SQL Managed Instance has near 100% compatibility with the latest SQL Server database engine, providing a native virtual network implementation that addresses common security concerns and a business model favorable for existing SQL Server customers. Note, Azure SQL Managed Instance is the intelligent, scalable cloud database service that combines the broadcast SQL Server database engine compatibility with all the benefits of a fully managed and evergreen platform as a service. Question 30. Which setting can only be configured during the creation of an Azure Cosmos DB account? Here in this question, API is the setting that can only be configured during the creation of an Azure Cosmos DB account. Thus, the correct option is D. You must create a separate account for each API. These were all the questions for this video. You can find the complete PDF of this video and our practice questions through the link down in the description. We will be publishing more parts to this series in the future, so please make sure to subscribe our channel and press the bell icon. Thank you for watching and stay tuned.